Welcome, everyone. This is the Strategic CFO, Forging the Path to Services Success session. Today's CFOs are stepping far beyond the P&L. They're strategic partners shaping how services are delivered, scaled, and sustained. I'm Melissa Corzin, Vice President of Customer Experience Operations at Kantata. And I am absolutely thrilled to be joined with Hester Scotton today, the CFO at Potter Clarkson, a leading intellectual property law firm. Hester brings a 20-year track record of strengthening finance and driving transformation across several sectors, all while championing innovation and improving stakeholder trust. She brings a collaborative spirit to her work, and it makes her the perfect person to explore how companies are transforming services delivery and driving measurable impact in a world defined by speed, complexity, and constant change. Additionally, Hester's a repeat Kantata customer, where she's used Kantata to address visibility into engagement margins, revenue forecasting, and pipeline transparency. I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks. I hope you're all leaning in and ready to take notes. In my experience, the CFO is one of the most important partners you can have in your business. Hester, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's
Thanks,
dive
Melissa.
right in. I'd like to start by having you take us on a quick journey and tell us what drew you into the CFO role and how that's evolved in recent years for you.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I think the reality is my background is not that of a typical CFO, which I think has probably been quite helpful for me as I've gone down the journey, particularly looking at some of the challenges we're going to come and talk to you later. I mean, historically, my roles were much more focused on risk and control, and then sort of more recently focused on the strategic angle of how do you make processes more efficient? How do you get the right outputs for the business? And ultimately, that led to me being offered the role of CFO at my previous organisation, where I was there for sort of 5 years. And that was the start of the journey of using Kantata and looking at some of those sorts of operational and organisational transformations. It's been an exciting journey. But I think one thing that's really resonated with me throughout that is that it's no longer about your ability just to get into the detail of the historic numbers, the forecast, the strategic aspects of the role, and the holistic oversight that you bring to the business is something that is very valuable. And it's very important for those sort of people sitting in that role to feel confident, not only looking at historic trends, but really sort of driving that transformation agenda, helping organizations understand where their challenges lie in terms of accurate forecasting, resource management, and those challenges that we all grapple with on a sort of regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about this transformation or the evolution of the way you have become more strategic in your input into the business. How do those changes and that evolution change the way that you measure success beyond just margin and profitability, which are traditional CFO measures? How do you look at things differently?
I think, as you say, that those things will always be important because ultimately those are the metrics that go to the external world, but it doesn't really tell anything about the sort of, I would say, the health within the organization. It doesn't help you run your business. It doesn't help you drive a sort of customer-centric approach whilst thinking about the impact on profitability it has for your business. So I probably come from a sort of slightly different background from many of those on the calls. I was a sort of professional services background. I'm now sort of sitting within the legal space. But I think once you're selling people services, the sort of key concerns are the same. So first of all, thinking about sort of the resources that you have and utilization. So do you have the right people sat at the right level doing the right types of roles? Then sort of supporting from a sort of people perspective, the development plans that go around that, identifying opportunities for people to progress, or being able to look and say, well, actually, from a business case perspective, we have no need for people at that level. So that sort of thing, I think, in terms of resource utilization is absolutely key in terms of the sort of wider success of the business and where actually plays a big part in terms of budgeting and those sorts of things. And if you've got great tools that enable those types of analytics, I think budgeting becomes really meaningful, as opposed to sort of people sitting there going, okay, those people can be promoted because they've been here long enough, or without any actual ability to look forward and think about whether you're going to be able to set those people up for success, recover the increased costs that go with them. So obviously, I think that's key. And then I think around it, engagement analytics in a real-time basis is absolutely critical in the sort of evolving market. I think many people within sort of the professional services space have had the benefit of either working on fixed fee arrangements, and therefore, you know, the time is the time is the time, with very sort of little transparency over the margin that that's delivering. Or they've been in the really fortunate space of perhaps some of the more traditional consulting businesses, such as accounting and within the legal space, where you just charge for your time and your clients pay for it because they've got no ability to assess the sort of value of that output, other than you saying that that's the time that you've spent. So engagement analytics is increasingly important, because what we're seeing is more and more clients asking for budgets and scopes and fixed fees that are then adhered to and managed against, and certainly it's sort of pushed back in terms of that sort of constant client management where there's potential overruns. We're seeing a lot of clients coming back to us where overruns are discussed at the end of the engagement, saying, well, I'm not prepared to pay for that, you didn't tell me that, so it's not happening. So that obviously means that affects your write-offs. It also has a potential to impact that ongoing client relationship, and perhaps we'll cover this as we go on to sort of talk about changing market dynamics. But in a world where people can be augmented by AI, sort of supported by AI, your client relationships are key. So good management of those relationships are critical. And then I think the last piece to sort of touch on is probably is WIP management and debtor management. So again, historically, I think particularly in some of the more traditional consulting spaces, there's been a lack of concern about working capital management. Clients will pay their bills when they get sent, relatively timely. Typically, there's been sort of relatively strong balance sheets, but actually in this sort of evolving market, people want to be billed for things on a timely basis. We all know that as WIP gets aged these days, clients are much more likely to push back, say they're not prepared to pay for it. And actually, cash is king, and so you can have the healthiest P&L you like, but if you're not getting cash in and you're not really being paid for your services, then that's critical. So any tools that sort of support putting that commerciality front and center of the fee earner on a real-time basis is really, really critical. And those are metrics that every fee earner should be aware of. And I think we've got to move away from finance being the sort of gatekeeper of that information that's released on a periodic basis, to something where people understand and feel empowered to have those types of conversations with their clients.
Yeah, I mean, you've just said so many important things there, and I want to dig into a few of them. Before I do so, I want to let the audience know that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you have questions as you're hearing this conversation and things that you would like to ask, please put those questions in there, and we will jump in and try to address those as we go. One of the ones that I want to dig into, in our morning sessions today, we've been hearing about the evolution of from PS 1.0 to PS 2.0, and this importance of being able to demonstrate repeatable value and proven impact. And you've been talking about, engagement analytics, and you've been talking about, how we manage our workforce and promoting people for delivering value versus time of service or length of service. How do you start to incorporate into those engagement analytics or your utilization metrics, even things like relationship management or client outcomes, alongside traditional measures like cost optimization?
I think traditionally the cost sort of associated with client relationship management has been something that's sort of quite often sort of fallen into a sort of black hole of the CRM bucket. But increasingly, actually, I think in a world of AI, what clients are paying for is that relationship, is that willingness to really understand their business and your ability to go in and solve problems at the point that they have that problem. They don't want to pay to get you up to speed. They expect that. You need to be the first person they call at the point that they have a problem. We've all been there. You have a problem in your house. You need a plumber. Someone puts a leaflet through the door. You call the leaflet because it's there. As in professional services, you need to be constantly talking to your clients. And so therefore, what we all have to try and find a way to address is how do we start factoring that client relationship time into what we onwardly charge our clients? Because actually, I think what we're going to see as the sort of market changes and the dynamics in the market change, and the increasing sort of reliance on AI and availability of AI, is that the time spent delivering sort of traditional consulting work is going to diminish, but the time spent servicing your client is probably going to increase because you're going to have to invest more time in those relationships. So net, you're probably going to end up in a very similar place, but there's got to be a way in which we talk to clients about the value and the investment that's being made. And I think that is going to be a challenge for all of us as we go down this road, because traditionally CRM and business development is not something clients are used to having to think about. So I think the education piece comes not from the clients, but actually more from our fee earners, particularly where they do work on a time and materials basis, to factor that into the bill that goes into the client, which is, okay, maybe something that traditionally took you 10 hours is now only going to take you 3 or 4 or 5, but you've still invested other time, and you've got to find ways of capturing that. And again, tools, one of the reasons I like tools like Kantata is you can capture it all in one place, so you can see the health of an overall engagement, and you can start to have really sort of rich conversations with your clients about the value that you're bringing that goes above and beyond sort of key pieces of work that you might be delivering.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're starting to see, we used to have very fragmented, sales teams, services teams, customer success teams. And you're starting to see some of those motions of that client relationship blurring between different platforms, right? And so we talk a lot about, we could measure the project health and the health of a project, but how during our services relationship are we looking at the holistic customer health? Because at the end of the day, we want our customers to continue to bring repeat business to us and have a long-term engagement, right? And so, thinking about those relationship aspects, and I think it's important when we talk about AI and services, there's a lot of fear and concern that AI is potentially replacing services in some aspects, but I like to say it's shifting the importance of services into that relationship category, right? It can accelerate some of the things and take that off of the plate of our team members so that they can focus on using that information to build those deeper, richer relationships with our customers that are going to help them get to things like, outcomes and long-term impact and value.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Melissa. I think that is really critical, and I think one of the other sort of real values of us as humans is, if we give ourselves additional time to think about the problems our clients face, we're more likely to have the opportunity to come up with far more sort of creative solutions for our clients than we would otherwise. And so it's upon us all to think about how we then use that time on an ongoing basis. And I'm absolutely with you. You don't go and buy an AI bot, because actually, it's the relationship you have with that individual. It's knowing that if I pick up the phone to you, Melissa, to say I've got a problem with some aspect of Kantata, that you're going to listen, you're going to know my business, and you're going to be able to respond to that. That's irreplaceable. And I can have the best AI sort of chat out there, but it's only going to come back with sort of relatively generic responses to me unless I continue to train it. And actually, you still lose that real sort of deep ability to understand a business and to understand the sort of softer side of the business that comes through those human interactions that you have as a consultant and as a trusted advisor.
Absolutely. You know, the theme this year of Converge is big or bold ideas and real results. And I think we can all agree that in order to make that a reality, it requires innovation. And as we're starting to talk about this new paradigm that we're all faced with things like AI acceleration, and we just talked about the Kantata experience engine. I'm interested in sort of how CFOs at organizations partner with their services or consulting organizations to change the way they package and create service offerings. Do you have any thoughts around what that new world might look like?
This is something that I find really, it's something that I find really fascinating because there's varying different degrees of maturity across the professional services business in terms of this. And I think it depends which space you operate in, the nature of the expertise that you bring, that probably has some aspects in terms of defining the importance of this. But certainly within the space that I operate in, there's a lot of challenge around sort of scope management and delivering to the sort of scope requirements of the client, and then really sort of actively managing against that and helping clients understand where they're asking for things that weren't in scope, or that need to sort of really go above and beyond what the client is asking for. Now, again, I think there's opportunities within AI that AI provides to allow that to be sort of more sort of manageable. But again, sort of bringing it to an everyday analogy, if I go to a garage and say that I want to buy a Ford Fiesta, and then they give me a Rolls Royce, then I'm going to be really happy about that. But I'm not going to want to pay for it because I've told you my budget is a Ford Fiesta. Equally, if I go to you and say, hey, I want a Ford Fiesta, but then I'm saying, well, actually, I want this and I want that. And in the end, what I'm really describing to you is a Rolls Royce. It's entirely reasonable for them to turn around and say, well, I'm going to charge you for a Rolls Royce. But as people, we have that lack of, we don't necessarily have that inbuilt confidence in the value that we bring to our clients to go back to them and articulate confidently the difference between what's being delivered versus what's been asked for. And I think, again, the more we can create tools that enable people to understand how things have been scoped and then manage against that scope, that's really, really critical, because that enables good real-time conversations with clients and managing their expectations in terms of what's going to be delivered. It's really, really critical.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the various ways that AI and automation are going to reshape the way that expertise is delivered and valued within an organization. Um, as our services leaders are thinking through this and starting to think about different service packaging models or services that they want to deliver, oftentimes that involves a conversation with the CFO within a company, right? And they need to come prepared to not just say, hey, I'd like to offer this new service, but to provide that in a compelling way. What recommendations or elements do you see during that conversation that make it easier for you to say yes faster, or really difficult for you to get on board with those types of conversations?
I think first and foremost, what's always important to me is to know that it matters to our clients. So actually, a really good starting point is for someone to have client feedback, or ideally sort of a couple of client feedback, which says, actually, we'd really like you to offer your services in this particular way, or we want to be able to access it in a different way to the way you're currently offering it. That immediately sort of opens your mind to thinking, okay, we're being asked to do something differently. And actually, as a CFO, your role is to facilitate the business moving forward strategically. So then your role becomes not about saying no. Your role becomes about working with your consultants, with your fee earners, to think about how you can turn this into something that's profitable and then sort of something that's then scalable. So we service a lot of startups, for example, in the space that we work in. So we work in intellectual property. We have various products that are available to startups, which we price competitively. Now, there's various reasons for that. One, startups don't often have a lot of money, but it's really critical that they understand the value of their IP. We then have to work to think with the fee earners, okay, well, how do you resource that in a way that gives them the right outcomes? How do you resource that in a way that enables you to deliver that profitably? And how do you stick within the scope of the work that you're sort of delivering? So I think for me, it's first and foremost thinking about what's driving the wish to offer it. Is it something that you're responding to as from client feedback? And it might not even be as specific as the client telling you that it's that they what they want. It's you interpreting what's being said and thinking, hey, there's a gap in the market here. I could do something differently. I think that's the other sort of critical piece. It's people coming with sort of views on what the market trend is and direction of travel in the marketplace. So working in sort of the legal sector, you'll often hear that sort of T&E is dead. I understand, having not worked in this space particularly long, this conversation has been going on for the last 10 years. But as you start to see that sort of shift, you've got to be ready to respond to that. So people having views in terms of what is happening in the market, what is going to set us aside. And for me, the role of the CFO is to be an enabler. So businesses succeed not because of what they do that is the same as other businesses. It's about what they do differently. So come with a product, come with why it's different, come with how you make it successful, come with what you think the target market's going to be, come with the opportunity, and come with some sort of key milestones as to how you then assess the success of it. So actually, again, if you've got great analytics coming out, how many of these do you run before you say this is or isn't going to work for us? Then it's the evolution piece. And be prepared for you not to get it right the first time round. And as a CFO, your role is to put the sort of sandpit in place that allows people the opportunity to go and try these things, and then to be the sort of gatekeeper to saying, well, hold on a minute, you've run 20 of these so far, only 10 of them have broken even. What do we need to do differently? Is there a way in which we can run it differently? Can we introduce AI? Can we use more junior resource and help them sort of pull those different levers? But don't just allow it to continue indefinitely. And if it's a success, make sure that success is championed so that people know that there is this opportunity to come and do things differently.
That's incredibly powerful, because I think a lot of times when people prepare to take something to a CFO, they're thinking, I need to go in and I need to have a very clear, it's all about what margins we're going to bring, what's it going to cost, what are we going to charge for it, and that sort of thing. And while you said, those are critical components, your most important things that you just mentioned are, how is this going to benefit our customers, right? How is this aligned to the strategy of our company and where we're headed? Is this serving a need in the market? Is this meeting an unmet need, right? Those are the most important things. If the answer to those is, oh, yes, we're going to try it. And then we're going to partner to tweak it and optimize it and make it profitable if it's meeting all of those other aspects.
Absolutely, Melissa. And you articulated it far better than I did. The reality is that if you're trying something new and different, you're unlikely to know exactly what those outcomes, unlikely to know exactly what is going to be prepared to pay for something. That's okay. You just have to be able to respond to the analytics. And that's where the most important thing is those real-time analytics. So you can constantly be looking at the health of those types of things.
Excellent. I know we just have a few minutes left here, so I would like to spend a little bit kind of future casting and looking in our crystal ball. What is a bold prediction that you would make about the future of services?
Um, I mean, it's undoubtedly going to be impacted by AI. I think there are a number of challenges that we're all going to have to work to. And I think the most critical of those challenges that we all are going to need to lean into is how do we create a sustainable pipeline of talent, particularly in the world where AI can do a lot of the work of junior consultants or new grads, where that was sort of very much typically the sort of development path. We have to balance cost management with that sustainable pipeline of talent. We have to be developing future leaders in this space. We have to be willing to invest even when there is a changing dynamic and changing requirement for that talent. So I think thinking about those resource masses is really key. I think we also have to be able to move a lot faster. So everything is happening so much quicker than it used to. So those companies that are going to move forward and move forward well are those companies that invest now in setting themselves up to be able to respond to those trends really, really quickly in ways that don't require big outlays of investment. I don't think, to the point that you made earlier, Melissa, I don't think AI is going to remove the need for people and professional services. I think it is going to just need for us to be more innovative in our own thinking, and just be more willing to try things and do things differently, and just don't follow the herd. I think that's probably going to be really critical in the future. It really is going to be about what you do differently to your competitors, not what you do the same, that's going to be key for professional services. And as I say, I think front and center is going to be the importance of the relationship. Now, it doesn't sound like rocket science, but I think we've all dealt with advisors who treat the relationship as a bit of a throwaway. It doesn't really matter. There's always another client. Well, actually, increasingly, there's AI and there's always another provider. So really, really nurture those client relationships and be that trusted advisor. Don't try and try and take clients for rides. Be fair, be honest in your pricing, be transparent, be commercial, recognize that they, like you, are a business who are trying to make money and get the best possible outcomes. And the perfect marriage in professional services is where both you and your client win. And I think it's really important for us not to forget that. And I think that is going to be increasingly important as we move forward.
Yeah, so we should all walk away with this thought of, as we talk about AI, we don't think about talent management being one of the most critical components to an AI strategy. And you just painted such a case for why that is a very important component. Even with AI, still having the best talent is going to be how you make that relationship work. And then I was going to ask you for your last piece of advice that you'd leave with our audience, but I think you just said it. And I love that. The perfect marriage is when both you and your customer win. And I think that that is the premise of what we're trying to achieve, by not just looking at the margins and the performance of our projects, but also the overall impact and value that we're generating to our customers. So Hester, I thank you so much for joining us here today. I hope people have pages full of notes. If you have questions that you'd like to follow up with us about, please reach out. We would love to continue the conversation. Thank you again, Hester. Fantastic.
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, hi everyone. So thank you for joining us for that session. What a great conversation, Melissa and Hester. Thank you so much. And I love what you had to say about confidence and the value we bring to clients, the outcomes, spot on. And as we've been talking about this entire event, it's not a question of if you will need to change, it's how and how fast. So that takes us to our next breakouts. You're going to have two to choose from here, coming up at 11:55 Eastern Time. For OX customers, we're going to be diving into a topic called generative BI. We all have heard of generative AI. This is generative BI. It's going to blow your mind. And for XX customers, it's about unlocking the potential of AI within your platform. And that's going to be with QLink and Kantata experts. So pick one of those great things coming up in just a few minutes, and then you can find your way back to your great virtual chair. We're looking forward to seeing you there.